Hey bookworms! I'm Book Mouse.
And I'm Book Kitty, and this is
Our Book Nook. This week, we are exploring Silver Spoons, One's Journey Through Addiction.
By indie author Sarah Dickinson. Silver Spoons, One's Journey Through Addiction takes an intimate and raw look at the current face of addiction and recovery. Talking about the current opioid epidemic, we follow a young couple while one of them goes through the recovery process. Told through letters, we get an understanding of the relationship as it struggles through his addiction and resulting recovery. From detox, rehab, sober living, and the 12 steps of AA, you get a raw and honest look at the effects of addiction and how they affect relationships. There is explicit and graphic content.
Indie authors have a lot of challenges. They don't have the resources of the big publishing houses, so when you can find a gem, take it with a grain of salt and enjoy the story.
You might find some spelling or grammar errors, but if you can look past that, the story is usually pretty good. And in this case, that is very true.
I found the story's format a little bit challenging because it's not one I had encountered before. So it was unique, and I eventually found that very intriguing the way she did it. The format is set up as a series of letters between an addict in rehab and his girlfriend, with narrations in between that kind of flesh out their past and incidents that they refer to in their letters, kind of narrations to help fill in the gaps that you're wondering about. But the idea of using heartfelt written letters from their perspectives, I liked it. I liked that humanizing kind of dynamic.
It was personal. It was very personal.
It was very personal. Emotionally, I found it a little bit of a roller coaster, realizing that addiction is not just the person who's addicted. It's his whole world. It's her family, coworkers, friends. They're all affected. And the story points out that sometimes those closest to you, they're going through recovery too, just on a different level. And I liked how she pointed out the struggles that his girlfriend were going through, as well as the struggles he was going through. I felt that was real, that she didn't gloss over it. As Book Kitty likes to point out, character development is a big factor in what we read and how attached we become to those characters. In the beginning, I had trouble understanding and relating to the characters. To be honest, I was like, why didn't you dump his ass? But then as you get further into the story, you do eventually start to becoming invested in what's happening to these people, and the development starts to come along, and you realize that could be my neighbor, that could be my best friend, that could be my brother, and it helps you be more empathetic to what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked that in the end. At first I was mad. I felt like my emotions were being jerked around. But then I realized they had to be. They had to be so that I personally would become invested in what happened to these people.
And therefore be more understanding to addicts you may meet in life.
Exactly.
Or just random people that might be having a bad day. It's like that meme that goes around. What does it say? You don't know what someone else is going through, so be nice.
Absolutely.
This book throws that in your face. I don't know if the author meant for that, but for me, that was the major takeaway, was you don't know what somebody else's journey has brought them to, and you don't know what they're going through now. Being understanding is probably the most important lesson that I could gain from this book. For me, Silver Spoons didn't start out as a page turner. I kind of had to use my will to keep going. And it wasn't because of the content. I'll be very specific about that. It wasn't the story itself. It was just the fact that it wasn't my typical genre. I typically tend to gravitate toward books that aren't so realistic. This was very realistic. This was a grimy look at some of the worst parts of ourselves, a grimy look at how easy it is to fall into bad habits and to fall into addiction that causes us, because of the rewiring of our brain, to do things that we would never do sober, just itching for that next fix. And for me, it wasn't as much of an escape as most of my books are, which is the only real difficulty I had getting through it. I think Sarah did an amazing job at exploring both sides of an addiction. And I know I say both sides, knowing that there are more than just two sides. The entire family is going through this addiction as well. Her family, his family, their coworkers and friends, and you even get an insight into his dealers and his fellow users a little bit too. But what I liked is that it showed both sides of this relationship and what they're going through while he is in recovery. Now, you may have noticed that neither one of us has said a main character name. That's because there aren't any. The main male lead is simply referred to as Baby, Gorgeous, Superman, or he. And she, the girlfriend, is referred to as Baby, Gorgeous, she, etc. Their family and friends have names, but they don't. And I think the author did that on purpose. I think it makes it more relatable. It kind of shoves in our face that it's entirely possible for this to happen to any of us. It does point out in the book that his addiction started with pain pills, doctor prescribed pain pills. And throughout the book, throughout the letters, as she's trying to learn more about his addiction and the drug of choice, she learns all these facts, which she shares with him and therefore with us. And she points out how the American opioid epidemic has skyrocketed since 1995 because of the ease with which doctors can prescribe man-made opioid pain pills. So it not only takes a real look at the addiction and the recovery process itself, but it also takes a real look at our society through the filter of an addict and his girlfriend. As Mouse pointed out, the character development is a very important aspect to me, and throughout this book it's nothing but character development, not just for the addict going through recovery, which you would expect, but from the girlfriend as well. You see them both work through the steps. You see them both get to a point where they think they're being honest with their partner until they get about, I'd say probably about halfway through the steps. And then they really start to get raw and honest with each other. One might ask one, listen, I need you to stop with X in your letters. It's not helping me. It's causing more problems for my recovery. Or, I really need you to stop blaming me for this. They're getting brutally honest with each other. And that to me was a huge leap in character development. It showed how much they're growing over this. I think it takes place in it's a little over a year, because he's in the detox, then he's in the 30-day program, then he's in the sober living for a year. So it's a little over a year, and you just see them grow so much and grow into each other and grow into themselves individually. And that's not easy. When you're going through recovery, and I haven't been through it myself, but I've seen some of my friends go through recovery, and most times they recommend that you do it solo, that you don't have a relationship till you can keep a plant alive for 2 years, and then you can keep a pet alive for 2 years. Then you may look at starting a relationship. They were already in this relationship when the rehab started. So they could have broken up, but they didn't really have that option. They were there for each other, and they worked not only into themselves, but into the relationship, and were stronger for it because of going through it together, because she didn't dump his ass, as Mouse so succinctly put it. I did have some issues getting emotionally invested. There were some parts of the book where I was a little more emotionally invested than others. it wasn't until the end that I really started feeling for them. And I'm not going to give away the end because spoilers, but it kind of wrapped up everything in a big ball of emotional what the fuck. And I kind of liked that because throughout the book, I was almost feeling like it was a little idyllic, that the two of them were the exception to the rule. Their communication seemed too easy and too perfect. The addict's family was completely supportive all the way through, and that didn't seem realistic to me at first because the people that I've seen go through recovery or just in their active addiction, they lose the support of people around them. And that to me is more realistic. But then by the end, I realized why it had to be the way it was. I could hear the story that Sarah was trying to tell. Thanks for joining us. Next week, we'll be presenting our thoughts on Necrotech by Casey Alexander.
So don't forget to hit that subscribe button below so you don't miss it.
This is Book Mouse.
And this is Book Kitty.
Signing off.